Hey everybody on YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see, life's been a shit show, but we're in my kitchen in our new apartment and I have to peel some vegetables and start cooking, and I figured, you know, even though I'm fresh out of the shower, my hair is still wet and crazy, and it's kind of a it's a lazy Sunday, late morning, early afternoon, and I have nothing prepared for this video. But I thought that the topic was incredibly important and I have some things to say, and I just wanted to kind of break down some thoughts and also bring some more awareness about this topic into the pagan witchy online community, to my audience. And so today in my kitchen with my messy hair and makeup free face, I encourage you to crack open a beer or the beverage of your choice and join me on this journey as we talk about transphobia in the witchcraft community, and also break down some of the, what I would call kind of logical fallacies or misconceptions or just bad ideas regarding transphobia and radical feminism, and how these two things are not mutually exclusive or do not have to be mutually exclusive, and some of my thoughts about like where transphobia among feminists, cisgender feminist women comes from, and all sorts of messy shit. So I'm going to be cooking in my kitchen as I do this, so I can kind of like kill two birds with one stone kind of thing. This was not the first video that I had envisioned making in my new place, in our new apartment, but you know, I woke up this morning, and since I use the fertility awareness method as my main method of birth control and just being aware of where my menstrual cycle is at and blah blah blah, I take my basal body temperature in the morning. And so I have a thermometer and I have a timer. It's an old school like mercury thermometer, and so I set a 3-minute timer on my cell phone for the thermometer, and in those 3 minutes I'm still in bed, I haven't gotten up yet, and so I usually kind of just, you know, peruse social media, and usually my go-to, since it's early in the morning, my go-to social media of choice is my Student Witch Instagram, because I usually find very uplifting, empowering content there. Well, this morning I saw the opposite of uplifting, empowering content. I saw very transphobic and dehumanizing content there, and I'm going to include a screenshot that I took of the post in question that prompted this video, and I'm going to include the account name of the person who made this post. And I know that might be kind of a taboo thing, and it's really, it's not my intention to stir the pot or cause drama or anything, because I do not know this person personally. I've never, either in person or online, had any sort of interaction with this person. This video is not, it is not my video right now that I'm making. It is not an invitation to start verbally harassing this person at all. However, if you're going to make this kind of a post on a public platform like Instagram, a platform where you are building an audience or whatever, I don't know if this person would consider themselves an influencer or what, but if you are using a public platform such as Instagram to make this kind of a post, I think it is within your audience's right to make a response to it. I'm an academic, I'm a PhD student, And so this is how academia works. Like, you as an author of research, you publish your research, and then the audience of your research, which are fellow experts in your field, have a right to respond to it. Do people take it too far and take shit personally, and can people become abusive in their response and all that? Absolutely, because academics are just like flawed human beings, just like anybody, right? However, that response, or that right to respond and point out the flaws in arguments and the holes in arguments and the problematic parts of arguments, is a vital part of not just how research is made and how human knowledge is made. It's a vital part of just basic human communication. And so that is why I have no problem including this person's Instagram handle, or whatever it's called, with this post, even though by now they might have, by the time this video comes up, they might have deleted the post. I don't know, but you know, this is discourse, this is communication, this is how conversations go down. Also, before I share what this person said with the screenshot that I took, like I was saying earlier, this is not an invitation to harass this person. And in my video response right now, I am not going to be participating in any form of name calling or any sort of dehumanization, because my take on radical feminism and these sorts of social movements and activist movements is that basically the core of them is to fight against dehumanization. And you might hear people outside. I live in I'm in Santiago, Chile, so I'm in an urban area, and I have neighbors, and the windows are open because it's beautiful outside, but you might hear noises, sorry, like birds and people talking and stuff. So in the fight against dehumanization, it would be hypocritical of me to kind of name call this person or do or say anything that might be dehumanizing to this person, because I know as a cisgender white lady, I was born and raised in an environment that was in and of itself transphobic. I was raised to be transphobic, just like I was raised to be homophobic, which is really fucked up considering that I'm like bi/pansexual. That internalized oppression thing, right? I was raised to be misogynistic, I was raised to be racist, and so, you know, this is a process, this is a journey that we all have to go on, right? No matter how you identify or where you live in the world, this is a process of like decolonizing your mind and being, you know? And so I've been on this journey for a while. I've been lucky enough to have been exposed to very important ideas that inherently, or that right off the bat made sense to me, that helped me to reshape my understanding of the world and helped me to understand the fallacies within my own thoughts, right? The problems with my own thinking, so that way I can self-reflect and correct that, and then do what I can to help educate other people, right? Society at large in most parts of the world, because of colonialism and all that, is transphobic, is homophobic, is white supremacist, is misogynist and patriarchal, right? I liken it to, you know, like pollution in the air. It's in the air we breathe. And so it takes a lot of self-reflection and work to decolonize yourself and your mind from these kinds of attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, ideas, and poor arguments at the end of the day. So now I feel like I've given my spiel, right? And so I can share. Here comes the screenshot, and just to warn you, if you are sensitive to very transphobic material, just skip ahead about like 10-20 seconds. I know when I was just flipping through Instagram this morning while I was taking my basal body temperature, looking for uplifting content, and then this thing came across my feed from an account that I didn't expect it from, I guess. I don't really know this account very well though, but I had to like read it a couple of times because my mind just did not digest that, like, wait, is this real? Wait, is this what this is saying? Wait, what? So here it comes. Because I flipped through that, and some of the comments, like, I tried to make a respectful but rebuttal kind of comment, and Instagram didn't let me. Something about the number of comments for this post has been limited or something or other. I don't really know. That's my sink making that dripping kind of noise, by the way, if the camera picks it up. Unfortunately, in the comment section though, there were a lot of people in this person's audience who very much agreed with that sentiment. That transgender women are not real women. I mean, one person even commented something horrific like, "I'll never respect anyone who mutilates their own genitals. Like, these people are not real women, blah, 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 blah." Which is really disturbing. It's also really disturbing that the account that made this post, if you click on their account, and again, I don't know if this has been changed since then, but if you click on that account, you will see that they identify themselves as a radical feminist and pro-science. And so, what I would like to break down is how actually this level of transphobia is antithetical to radical feminism, and it's antithetical to science, or to scientific research, the body of knowledge that has been building from various fields within the sciences, both hard sciences and social sciences, and the medical science and psychology, all sorts of different fields that can be placed under that big umbrella of science. You know, the last few decades of research has largely shown that the psychology of gender and the complexity of gender identity is not dependent upon the genitalia you were born with, right? So, I guess let me start there, like this idea that being transphobic is supported by science, right, which is something that the person who made this post believes in, and actually kind of perpetuated this belief in the comments of that post, right? So I'm gonna liken this to the scientific community's understanding of homosexuality, right? Which homosexuality and your sexual identity and your gender identity are two separate things. Like, my gender identity, I was born female, I was labeled female at birth, I was raised female, right? And I still identify as female, so therefore I'm cisgender. That's what that term means, right? My sexual identity, however, is, and this is something that I had to like fight hard for and kind of like do that decolonizing process and kind of work on that internalized homophobia and stuff that I was raised with and that I was socialized into, because I've always been attracted to people of all sorts of different genders. Anyway, back in the day, as recently as I think the early 1980s, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual that is used to identify and diagnose mental illness, right, especially in the US, among professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed therapists, right? That diagnostic and statistical manual still identified homosexuality as a mental illness, basically, right? In case anyone's wondering what I'm cooking, I'm making a traditional Chilean dish called charquican. It's kind of like a vegetable meat stew that was traditionally made with cochayuyo. No. Oh, I can never say it. I'll have it here. It's a type of seaweed. Because Chile has that long coast on the Pacific Ocean, so a lot of seafood is prominent in Chilean cuisine. But it's also traditionally made with dried meat or jerky. I think the word charqui or charquican, the name of the dish, comes from, I don't know if it comes from Quechua. I believe it comes from Quechua, like the language group or family that is native to the Andean region, or one of the language families of native peoples that lived in this area. So isn't that kind of cool? Side note, I'm here as like this white gringa, like super gringa, right? And I am cooking with native ingredients like zapallo, which is the slices of squash here, which I'll show you in a second. I'm cooking with zapallo, and I'm cooking this dish that is like, has its roots in these peoples. Like, life is chaotic and wonderful. And beautiful sometimes, right? Anyway. So, homosexuality being labeled a mental illness, but nowadays, fast forward to the 2020s, right? And most, if not all, mental health experts worth their weight, right? Who are up to date and who have worked on their own internalized prejudices and stuff, right? Will agree that that was barbaric and wrong. And that actually human sexual behavior and sexuality is incredibly complex. And it is, even from an evolutionary and biological viewpoint, to say that homosexuality or homosexual behavior is not natural, is not, that notion or idea is not supported at all by the more hard sciences like evolutionary biology and biologists and animal behavior specialists, right? Like even in the animal kingdom, in mammalian animals and non-mammals, right? Hundreds of species display homosexual behavior, right? And so all of this is to say that these kind of outdated ideas about homosexuality and if it's natural or healthy or not, you know, like the conversation among scientists and in general in the general public has advanced and changed as the research advances and changes, right? That's the nature of research. So our understanding of gender not being necessarily tied to your genitals and genitalia, right? Gender being something more that is society specific and culturally specific, right? That conversation has advanced. That understanding has advanced a lot, especially in the last, 20 years or so. And it's thanks to psychologists and human behavior experts and anthropologists and people in the harder sciences, like people involved in medical research, right? These people, these experts who make peer-reviewed research by and large, have begun to see that human gender and gender identity and gender expression, and I keep saying this, but it's important to reiterate this, is not biologically based. So, for this person to post such a transphobic image or cartoon or whatever, and to claim that they are pro-science, kind of reveals that they themselves are not very familiar with the science and the scientific discussion around gender and where scientists actually stand in this discussion and where the research is going in this discussion, right? So that's kind of fallacy number one. Fallacy number two is that somehow you can be a radical feminist and be this transphobic. Right? So let's break that shit down. Alright, hair is still wet and air drying and a mess. But I'm about to slice the zapallo, so I thought I would share. This is zapallo. It's kind of like well, it's a type of squash that's native, because squash, pumpkins, right, they're native to the Americas. And this is a squash native to this part of South America. It's kind of like a big ass pumpkin, except it's green or sometimes it's white on the inside, on the outside, I mean. But this is it, and it is an ingredient that is featured in a lot of Chilean cooking, including cazuela, like a type of chicken soup, or sometimes it's made with beef. Cazuela, poroto con riendas, charquicán, which is how I'm cooking it today, so I thought I'd share. It's kind of cool. Can't get this in North America, or at least I've never seen it in North America. Anyway, so the point, what I really want to focus on in this part of my argument here is this notion among some feminists or self-proclaimed feminists who are transphobic, is this idea that being a feminist and being supportive of transgender people's experiences or whatever is somehow antithetical or mutually exclusive, or you can't do both. And that's really the feeling that I think is underlying this idea that transgender women are not women, or they have no place in feminism, or just all sorts of just bad ideas, right? It was in the comments to that post that I shared earlier. One of the members of this person's audience, I assume they were part of the audience, who agreed with the post, so they were transphobic. They said, "Oh, watch out, because the transgender community online is really aggressive, or they're gonna come after you." And I find that so funny, to label this community and these people as aggressive or like dangerous, or to kind of make the person who made this post into some sort of like victim, right? But they're being a victim and they're being attacked because they're telling it like it is and all that crap, right? It's really funny how like these transphobic people who are actually perpetuating the oppression of transgender and gender non-conforming people are painting themselves as the victims, when transgender people, at least in the US and in the Americas in general, are being physically attacked, are being murdered, are having their rights taken away. And yet this person has the nerve to say, or to try to make themselves into a victim, or to say that like the transgender community is outrageously angry or whatever. When like, it's infuriating. Anyway, so I've thought a lot about this, like, where does the transphobia come from among self-proclaimed feminists or radical feminists? Where does it come from? I think the kind of emotional component of this, and this is something that I've seen in all sorts of different online communities, is people who have been through real trauma and real bullshit, right? Who maybe out of a lack of self-awareness kind of adopt toxic behavior because they're still emotionally processing their trauma and the bullshit that they've been put through. And so you have a person, and again, this is just conjecture on my part, but this is just how I'm trying to make sense of it, because I've seen this kind of tendency. I mean, there have been high profile, like the JK Rowling situation, right? So you have people who identify as feminists who are then incredibly transphobic. And if you identify as a feminist and if you identify as female and you identify as a feminist, chances are you've been through some shit, because misogyny and patriarchy is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. So it kind of feels to me like you have a group of people who have fought so hard to get validation in the public eye, right? And that's a legitimate need, is to have your experience and your emotions validated. That is 100% legitimate and very important, right? And they almost see like self-proclaimed feminists who are transphobic, right? They've fought so hard to get their points across, to get their experience validated, to process their traumas, right? To get public discourse on their side for once. And then they see the discussion of gender and the transgender community come along, and they almost feel, and again, this is just how I'm trying to make sense of this, they almost feel as if the transgender community is taking the spotlight away from them. The spotlight that they've had to fight for. That's what it kind of feels like to me. Like, that's where all this like resentment comes from. I don't know. That's how I'm trying to make sense of it. Like, where does this come from? This animosity, where does it come from? And of course, I would argue, and my main point is, why do these two things have to be in opposition to each other? You can be a cisgendered radical feminist trying to fight for like women's rights and reproductive justice and economic equality and all of these things. But you can also recognize that the transgender community is valid, you know, that importance of validation, validating someone's experience, and how important that is for people's psychological and mental and emotional well-being, right? You can do that for people who are different from you. The transgender community and transgender, their specific needs and their specific experiences of oppression, right? It's not taking the spotlight away from feminists, right? It's not taking attention away from the experiences and needs of a group of people who have been oppressed for millennia, right? It's not mutually exclusive. Oop, I just dropped some sapayo, hold on. And there's actually something to be said for recognizing differences and diversity, right? But also where things overlap, right? You know, I'm a cisgendered woman, right? I'm married to a cishet man, right? But I understand where my particular experience of like patriarchy, misogyny, and all that is going to be different from a transgender woman or a non-binary transgender person or whatever, right? However, I can see like the overlap there, and I can see where coalitions between people from different groups can be made. You know, it's really important that we don't fall into that mindset where that competitive, dehumanizing mindset, because like divide and conquer, it's much more easier, I think, for these forms of oppression to keep being perpetuated if we keep being so unnecessarily divisive, right? Like, recognizing the differences in our experiences is vital and important, right? And community is vital and important, right? However, divide and conquer, like, don't allow like people to be easily, oppressed communities to be easily conquered just because, I don't know. It's complicated. It's complicated. But I guess my main point here is that you can be a radical feminist, and you can be 100% supportive and an outspoken advocate for the transgender community. You don't have to be transphobic, right? So those are my 2 cents on this. In terms of transphobia within the witchy and pagan community, that's incredibly unfortunate. And unfortunately, more common than I would like to think. And again, they're claimed to be radical feminists, and yet they're loud, out and proud viewpoints that are incredibly transphobic. It doesn't make any sense to me, because this idea of the gender binary, and that this binary is the only valid way of being, it's the only correct way of being, like the only people who get to call themselves women are cis women, and the only people who get to call themselves men are cis men. That whole idea of that structure and understanding of gender is intimately tied to colonialism, right? It's a very Western, right, idea, very Western, like post-1492 idea, and it was perpetuated and spread around the world through colonialism. And so I don't see how you can call yourself a radical feminist while also agreeing with an oppressive institution, historically and currently, oppressive institution like Western colonialism and Western modernity. That doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense at all to me. It's not feminist, and it's not very radical, if you ask me. And so I bring this up because the pagan and witchy community has been like shaped by the spiritual practices and beliefs of people oftentimes who were the colonized and the oppressed, people of color, indigenous people, and not just in the Americas, but all over the world. And of course, the discussion of cultural appropriation that's, you know, too much for one video. That would have to be for another day. But the alternative spiritual practice and witchcraft community owes a lot in the West, in Western Europe, in the Americas, especially North America. It owes a lot to the spiritual and magical practices of people who were colonized, right? And enslaved in some cases. So to push that very Western, strict, supposedly biologically based, which we've already dispelled that, to push that idea of gender onto everyone is just perpetuating colonialism. And again, I don't understand how you can do that while also claim to be a radical feminist. I really don't. I don't. So, this video has probably gone on long enough. This is a discussion that can go on forever, I'm sure. It needs to keep happening as long as there are people spreading these bad ideas and perpetuating oppression in the name of feminism. But that's my 2 cents. I encourage you to leave your 2 cents down in the comments below. Please be civil. No name calling, no dehumanizing language, no threats of violence, please, because that's just doesn't make any sense. It's counterproductive. But I just think this discussion was vitally important. Sorry for the presentation. I know the lighting isn't perfect, and I'm in here chopping vegetables with like crazy wet out of the shower hair. But I just couldn't wait to make this video. It's just too important. And I don't really care too much about my appearance when I'm making a video on YouTube. So there you go. But yeah, I think if someone is going to post comment or post material like this on a public platform, like social media, just like if an academic is going to publish an article or a book full of bad ideas, it is 100% within our right to respond, and so this is my response. Deconstructing and revealing the flaws in this type of these beliefs and these ideas. Okay? So, let me know what you think down below, and until next time, many, many blessings. Bye.